Welcome, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us for our Mentorship Mondays. Today, we are talking about everything around design thinking that we could possibly fit into a short 1-hour Mentorship Monday session. But I'm joined by two incredible technical experts today. And first, we're going to be speaking to Kavisha Nandhlal, who's the author of this amazing book, Initiate Design Thinking. As you can see, lots of post-its, lots of notes. I had the pleasure of interviewing Kavisha. Kavisha is also a WOMEX alumni. And during her book launch, we spoke about the concept of design thinking, the academics behind design thinking, and some of the case studies. So I'm going to first hand over to Kavisha. She's going to spend a few minutes with us. As always, on these Mentorship Mondays, we want to engage with you. So if you have any questions for either Kavisha or Mbe, who will be joining us in a little bit as well, please place them into the chat and we'll open up for conversation into about 20 to 30 minutes of this session. Kavisha, over to you and welcome to Mentorship Monday. It is so lovely to be chatting to you on this platform. So please do share with us more about your book and design thinking.
Hi, Jayshree. Thanks for having me. I'm just going to share a bit about what I've been doing with design thinking since I started in 2018. And the subject that I've been looking at mostly is design thinking for the SDGs. So this is one of the best definitions that I have come across for innovation, is that innovation is a process of making changes. It's introducing something new and creates value. And the reason that I'm talking about this is that a lot of people see innovation as tech, and we need to shift our minds away from that definition and see innovation as something that creates new value. Innovation, we need to look at innovation as a bigger picture of starting with a concept, moving next towards developing that concept into an innovation, and then the implementation of that innovation. The implementation includes business development. Where design thinking fits in mostly is helping us develop a concept for the innovation, helping us find a user need. But we can use design thinking also in the other phases of innovation. What we see in the middle of the screen is a picture of a complex problem. We can approach this complex problem in two ways. The first we can look at is how can we use this for improvements? And the other is we can also use it to create new innovations. So what makes design thinking unique? Many people would ask this question because they are engaged in problem solving, they are engaged in coming up with solutions, but what makes design thinking different to other approaches? Design thinking is a systematic approach to thinking in a certain way that can give you different outcomes. So most people think rationally and logically, as we can see on the left-hand side of the screen. They would assess the situation and they would logically derive solutions. On the right is what design thinking does. It helps us tap into different parts of our brain where we see humans first and we try to understand them first. And when you experience design thinking, you will see how this approach gives you different outcomes. Just a quick overview on the design thinking framework. We can start with a problem statement. Sometimes people leave this step out and go straight into understanding the problem, but it is important to frame a problem because it gives you some kind of specificity. Then we go into understanding the problem. We do the design research where we look at end users, and then we define the problem. And then from the definition of the problem, we move then into the solution space, where we ideate, prototype, and test solutions for its viability. I want to highlight a case study from my book on design thinking for the SDGs, and specifically design thinking for gender equality. Looking at SDG 5 for achieving gender equality, the problem statement was identified by someone who was at a municipality at KZN, and she observed that there are not sufficient women transitioning to higher levels of government. It's still a very male-dominated space. Moving into the solution and deriving insights for this, I attended a WOMEX event with WOMEX alumni, and after that, I had to look more into this as a solution to this problem. Because most of the WOMEX alumni spoke about how the program transformed them and how it empowered them. And this is what greatly impacted on their businesses. So business accelerators for women is a great solution to achieving gender equality. Because as we can look at some of the insights that were derived from this problem, is that some women still hold the belief that men are stronger and more powerful. And this brings out some of their internal feelings, and it deters them from being more ambitious in their careers and reaching higher levels in their career. Another insight is that a male-dominated environment has conditioned the mindset and the culture in perceiving that men have a greater ability than women, and this affects the behavior of people and the decisions that they make. And it's creating an unconscious bias that affects the role of women in higher positions. And finally, I want to share my book that has been released last year. It is available on Amazon, and I also have a distributor. It's Porcupine Press, who are in Johannesburg. So basically, my book is a new approach and how people can move forward and enhance their adaptability in complex systems for a more prosperous future. And this is the basic concept of what sustainable development is and how we can achieve sustainable development with design thinking. Thank you, Jayshree.
Thank you so much, Kavisha. I mean, that was just such a lovely and insightful take in terms of, the definitions around design thinking, as well as what is design thinking. And I know a lot of you on the call today are part of some of our accelerators, or you are part of the broader entrepreneurship ecosystem. And we're going to be speaking to Mbe in a little bit as well. But, I just want to touch on something that Kavisha said that was really important. Very often when we engaging with businesses, and many of you would know that I have a background in innovation and innovation management, individuals see the concept of innovation or the concept of design thinking that's reserved only for technology businesses. And in working on sector agnostic programs, we have shown businesses how they can use the concept of design thinking and apply it to businesses within any sector and at any stage. And also, we had the privilege of speaking to Kavisha when she was authoring her book on the WOMEX case study. And one of the things we spoke about was, imposter syndrome. So I love how some of those practical issues that we deal with as businesses and individuals can also be included in and around a topic of design thinking. But now we're going to swiftly move forward. Please keep your questions for Kavisha. I'd like for Kavisha and Mbe to answer questions at the end of their presentations, and we will leave at least 20 to 30 minutes for that. We're now going to be speaking to Mbe Khumalo. Now, Mbe is one of our expert facilitators and mentors, and a key resource within the YIEDI family of individuals that we work with. And Mbe works practically on the ground with businesses using design thinking tools. helping them to take their businesses to the next level, applying some of these concepts. Now, remember, we spend hours, days, months sometimes with these businesses. So you're not going to get every single tool and the detail of it within a session like this. But at least it gives you enough to go out and research and find out how you can apply some of this in your own business. So, Mbe, thank you so much for joining us, and over to you.
Joshua, thank you so much. Just checking you can hear me loud and clear. Colleagues, good afternoon. Thank you for making the time on this Monday afternoon, end of March. So as Joshua mentioned, I focus quite extensively on the innovation component using design thinking. I think there's just a great opportunity that large organizations, large enterprises have in driving design thinking, driving innovation, as particularly incremental innovation, using design thinking, getting different teams into the room to find dynamic ways to solve existing problems. So just top line, design thinking. What is this thing? Using sort of very creative user insights as an approach to solving problems, ultimately centering the user, what does the user want, etc. This can be used to solve very complex problems or to develop new products for markets. Quite often in the work we have done, as Joshua has mentioned, we do design thinking both for SMEs that are in our development programs, but we've also, and this I find most exciting to do, have gone to established very large organizations to do design thinking or assist in facilitating design thinking so that the group at an enterprise level can come up with new dynamic solutions and ultimately develop dynamic capabilities, a way to kind of disrupt itself. Yeah, and then number 3, centering humans in the problem-solving journey and really understanding who the potential user is and what their problems and desires are. It's important to just mention, as to just really stress what Jeshu said, innovation/design thinking isn't, and what Kavisha said actually, it isn't just about tech. This really is about doing things in a different way to create value. One of the largest organizations we've done design thinking for is probably the largest grain agriculture organization in South Africa, probably top 2 or top 3 on the continent. And, they're full agriculture business, very little to no tech. And through the design thinking intervention we did there, just amazing results that came out of it. We came up with a composting business that used a very low tech, I actually believe in low tech to no tech solutions. For composting, we had one for silo and grain management. We also had one for where we developed a grain marketplace that doesn't have to be sort of a big sort of AWS level of marketplace, very low tech, very no tech. And so that's just to show you that you can use design thinking for anything, for textiles, for the hair industry, the pet industry. The fundamentals are really what you need to honor. Okay, so this is design thinking on one page. So if you had to say we were doing design thinking today, what did you mean this is it? Firstly, we begin with empathy. Understand people's challenges through conversations, interviews, etc. Speak to people, understand what's wrong. Important. Don't start with just market research, right? That's what most people want to do in the design, in the innovation and build journey. They want to do market research. No, speak to people and not from a sort of a top line market research. No, speak to very specific people that are closest to the problem. That's actually how you start with empathy. Number 2, defining the problem, as Kavisha said, draw insights, needs from the interviews, use this to form a problem statement. Use the insights to form a problem statement. Don't hallucinate the problem, right? The problem isn't what you think, it's what they said. That's important. Founders, we like to make the minds up for people. It's what they said, it's not what you think. Number 3, ideate. Begin to develop ideas based on the problem. And here, really just go wild. Don't be limiting of your thoughts. Go wild in terms of ideas. Put even the stuff that sounds silly, put it down. Then you can start thinking about prototyping, building an MVP. From a tech perspective, we call it a clickable prototype. Notice that building anything, doing the first time you're going to spend money and really sort of invest finances. Look, before now, you're investing your time, you're investing your attention, of course, and that is quite valuable. But this is the first time you spend money. It's at step number 4. You will just be amazed at how many entrepreneurs and founders start by building a prototype. They do a little bit of market research and then they build an app. They build a clickable prototype. They waste money, they waste time. This has to happen much further down the line. So in this journey, it's step 4. And then finally, step 5, test your assumption. Give your product to users, even if it's for free. Just give it to them, let them use it, observe. And lastly, iterate. When they start using your product, they're going to teach you things. They're going to struggle. They're going to get frustrated. They're going to get lost in your product. They're going to misunderstand what it's supposed to achieve. Don't try and talk them through the demo. Don't try and explain, hey, this is how you do this. Just keep quiet, observe, take learnings, and iterate and fine tune. So this is design thinking really on a slide. I want to quickly just 2 slides just to say steps in empathy. What do we do for empathy? So if you had to start tomorrow to empathize, there's multiple ways. You can do interviews, which is the easiest ones. Find a community, talk to them, ask them questions. You can observe. Go to a community of people that are facing this problem. When I say community of people, this could be the people at the cafeteria or the canteen where you work, right? This isn't necessarily a whole community. This is a group of people that are closest to the problem, that are feeling the pain today. Observe them. Just keep quiet and observe. You can do an immersion where, we've seen, particularly with large entities, these consulting firms, they even do this with MBAs where they'll take them to a actual village somewhere or a town somewhere and you'll live there for a week, sort of breathe the air. So an immersion is another way you can do it, where you kind of, the lived experience, get that lived experience inside. Lastly, these last 2, develop what we call problem interviews. This is a huge thing. It's a huge mistake that entrepreneurs make when they do a problem interview. Halfway through listening to someone talk about the problem, you start offering solutions. You start saying, so why is this so expensive? And when someone is telling you about the problem, you want to say, why don't you try this? Why haven't you? We innately want to help. We innately want to fix things. When you do a problem interview, only talk about the problem. Don't even bring up one solution. Don't even ask, have you tried this? Just deepen your understanding of the problem and then walk away. And then a week later, come back and do a solution interview where you come back with a whole host of lovely little solutions. And you say, here's what I think you can try. Have you tried this solution? Have you tried this solution, et cetera, et cetera. Very important. Lastly, in the ideation process, the most important parts of design thinking that I really want to talk about, I don't want to talk about all of these, but it's 2 points under brainstorming. When you do your brainstorming with your team, bullet point number 2 and bullet point number 4 under brainstorming. Note personal motivations that may hamper the process and prevent hierarchy from affecting the group. When we do design thinking in corporates, we see this quite often. A line manager, a senior manager will notice that we're basically building a solution that's gonna render them, it's gonna basically replace their jobs. People become emotional, people become territorial. So note these hidden motivations. Make sure they don't get in the way of the build. Some people may actually even block the process when they start to realize that, oh my God, if this thing works, I'll be out of a job. So be careful of that. And the last one, hierarchy. Working with management, I mean, we've had partner level people, director level people in there. And when you have the section, the employees are anxious, they're nervous, So be careful. If you're the leader, just make sure that there's safety, that the team knows that they can really dream and do whatever they can. And last considerations, cost implications. How much does this problem cost an organization today? What I've found is if you're going to do design thinking for a company and you really want to help them solve, if the company doesn't know how much the problem is costing them, if they haven't quantified the problem, it means the problem doesn't hurt enough. It's not a big deal. They don't need you. We've learned that. But when the company is able to say, we'll speak to Jayshree and they'll say, we're losing R1 million a month from this, or this is costing us 3, 4, 5 employees too many to execute. Once they have a sense of how much the problem hurts, that's when you know you're speaking to a company that's ready to change. Make sure that you select the right problem and the right customer to do design thinking with. That early first customer, particularly once you've done your design thinking and you've developed your new product, select the right customer. The problem has to be ideal. Quite often when we work with big clients, big clients, they pay well, but a big client can really pull your product away from what you're originally intending. They can change the course of your product. So be careful. And frequency is also important. You can't really work with an organization that needs your solution like once a month. They need to need you often, 2, 3 times a week, or perhaps multiple times, or once a day. The frequency and desire for the product and solution has to be high enough for you to really learn. And I think I'll stop there, Jayshree.
Wow, thank you so much, Mbe. I mean, you guys are so efficient with the use of your time, but I think there's such many questions coming through as well. Kavisha, based on what Mbe said, and before we open it up, so ladies and gentlemen on the line, please feel free to put your questions into the chat, and we will ask you to unmute in a little bit as well. So based on what Mbe just said, Kavisha, is there anything you want to add to this conversation before we open up to the floor?
No, maybe I can just go straight to, I was actually typing in an answer to Nirasha. I saw her question.
We'll get to the
that
question
she,
in a little bit, but I just want you to, if there's anything that struck out for you from what Mbe actually shared, is that something you'd like to give?
not much to add after what Mbe said. I think he covered most of what design thinking is, the way it's done in organizations. But I think in organizations, we just need to expand our focus. In organizations, a lot of people use the traditional service delivery or service design, looking at your customers. And there's so much more that you can do if you change your way of thinking into stop saying customers and say end users, and just look at who can be an end user. It's not necessarily a customer. It can be someone who is an employee. It can be someone who is in management, and just apply the same things that what Mbe has covered to that person. So it's basically thinking in terms of end users. And you'll find that the company can find a lot more insights, and design thinking can become more beneficial to them in terms of business growth.
Thank you so much, Kavisha. And now let's move on while you have the floor, Kavisha. I think Nirasha asked one of the first questions. So Nirasha's question, for those of you that can't see it, is, Kavisha, how do you approach resistance to design thinking in traditional corporate environments? And how does empathy play a role in this process? So if you can keep your response short and to the point, Kavisha. Thank you so much. Over to you.
Okay, so this is a very common question because a lot of corporates don't really embrace design thinking, and that is because of the way that it's portrayed and it's put forward. There's always this 5-step process that comes up with empathy, define, and so on. And people don't really understand the depth of it and how it's actually used and how it's applied. And it's that they can't envision how they can use it in their environment. So the first step in getting people to embrace design thinking is to understand specifically that company that you approach. How can they use design thinking in their work environment? How is it applicable specifically to them? And just highlight that as a practical approach. And when people see how they can specifically use it, then they start looking at a deeper understanding and how else can we use it. So that's basically the first step into getting people to use design thinking. I'll just use one quick example. I went into the municipality and I did a study on design thinking at the municipality. And I just looked at what they do and how they do it. So things like job creation, traditional economics of looking at partnering with the private sector to create jobs. So with design thinking, we're looking at a different approach of not how to create jobs, but understanding people and why people can't get jobs, and then generate insights in that way. And when I did a workshop with them, they said this is a way to improve economic development outcomes. It's a different approach. We wouldn't get these insights otherwise without traditional ways of doing things. Yeah, so that's just one way of doing things, understanding what they do, how they do it, and then bringing design thinking in to show this is a different approach.
Thank you so much, Kavisha. I mean, that's such valuable advice. In fact, just the other day, I was reading, refreshing my memory on an article I wrote a while ago for an innovation journal. And it's the same, you know, when we get into corporates and we start talking to them about innovation. You know, they assume that it's one thing, but it can be so many different things, depending on how they want to embrace this concept and use it as a strategic tool. So strategic alignment and understanding what a company can do with these concepts is absolutely critical as well to get it right within organizations. Nirasha, I hope that answered your question. Raksha, I see you on the line as well. And Mbe, speaking to people usually forms a part of market research. Raksha, please unmute. We'd love to hear your voice. I'm sure Mbe would too. And please feel free to give your comments and ask your question.
Hi, Kavisha. Hi, Mbe. Hi, Jayshree.
Raksha.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Mbe, it was so interesting. You flew through that content, and I think for us as SMEs, and I think someone like you and Kavisha and Jayshree who are so well versed in this world of design thinking, the rest of us who kind of have to visit it once every couple of years, it takes a while to stay on track with you as you were going through it. But one of the first points that you mentioned when you said the first thing we naturally want to do is market research, but just start talking to people. So I wanted to just distinguish between that, because obviously with me coming from a marketing background, I'm the one who's just constantly reminding us how important market research is. And I think within the design thinking framework specifically, just help us frame that a little bit better. Is it, when you say talk to people, are you saying talk to people outside of the normal scope, range, profile of people you would normally talk to? Or yeah, please help clarify that for us. And maybe as a general comment for everyone in the room here, Kavisha and Mbe, the conversation is leaning very much into corporate, and I understand both of you, I mean, Kavisha speaking about servicing into public sector, Mbe, you talking about your work with the large corporates. I think to also just speak a little bit more into making it relevant for us as SMEs, please.
So thanks so much for the question, Raksha. It's so great to be hearing from you. So thanks for the question. So a couple of things. So you're right. Speaking to people does form part of market research. I guess where I'm coming from is I've found small teams, SMEs, founders, ideators, entrepreneurs, what they like to do before they go into something is they quite often the things that trigger entrepreneurship, the things that make someone decide to do something or start something, it's usually an observation they've made or it's something that's happened to them. So you go to a hospital and you needed to go to a hospital because you sprained an ankle or something or your arm, and then you get there and you notice that, oh my gosh, they still made in 2024, in 2025, they still opened a file, a paper-based file for me for this hospital. And you think, oh my gosh, it's 2025. Why are we not digitizing files? And then the average sort of founder or innovator will look at that and say, okay, this is evidence that I need to open a tech startup that digitizes patient files because I went to that one hospital and that one hospital does paper-based files. This is such, I mean, as the more time goes and the more time I spend in this industry, the more I realize just how underinformed most founders and entrepreneurs are about the body of knowledge. They're not truly researching. You know, when you see Dr. Kavisha, she in her opening slide, there was it's almost like an in-text, a quote, almost like in-text referencing there, as to show you that, you know, she has a scholastic approach to research. She knows the body of knowledge. And I think founders don't know the body of knowledge. They're experiencing something and they're saying, this means I should open an entire business. I've spoken to entrepreneurs and I say, how many people in your life have you spoken to about this? They haven't even spoken to 10 people. They spoke to like 2 or 3 people. And that's so frightening for me to start an entire venture. So, and so anyway, most entrepreneurs then want to do a desktop research. They'll do some Google, etc. But you really need to speak to 100 people before you get into anything. Because I keep asking myself, if you're not speaking to 100 people to understand the problem, then who are your first 100 customers going to be? Who are these first 100 people that are going to buy your stuff? Nobody knows you. Nobody knows you. So if you're doing this research, you have to speak to 100 people before you start. And this is something I learned with the MIT program, the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, the program I did there, which is where I learned design thinking and rapid prototyping. They forced us to speak to 100 people a day, and they forced us to prove it. You know, 100 conversations a day for a week. It was grueling. But they kept asking me, if we waved a magic wand and you opened your business tomorrow and your app was working, who are the first 100 people who are going to buy from you? Do you think they're just going to find you? They're not going to just find you. So these American guys are like that. So that really became ingrained in me. Who are my first 100 customers going to be? It has to be people I've spoken to before. So yeah, key, market research. And ultimately, sensing and seizing, right? You have to sense, market sensing. I'm even going beyond saying market research. Market sensing, truly deepening your understanding of the body of knowledge, not just the market, the body of knowledge, so that you can say, here's where the gap actually is. And you're not starting a business that 10 other organizations that have way more budget than you, bigger teams than you, are actually already doing, and you actually shouldn't do this. You shouldn't pursue this. You need to find another way. Yeah.
Wow, thank you. And Raksha, so for those of you not aware, you should. Raksha is also one of our technical experts, and covering all things marketing, branding, and so many other amazing topics. But Raksha, I mean, you have seen firsthand, when we're engaging with businesses, trying to get them, and design thinking does play a huge role in doing your marketing research properly. Because, we've shifted from designing for a client to designing with a client. And now we're almost in a phase of products are being designed and solutions are being designed by clients, with all of the tools that we have at our disposal. So, and you said it, you were spot on, so many of us, and even we are guilty of this when we present in forums like this. We talk about the experiences with large corporates, but Mbe, as an example, is working on the ground with smaller businesses using design thinking as a concept. And even with the programs we run, the accelerator programs, we have a module just focused on design thinking with examples of how SMEs can use it. But the framework that we use for large corporate, and Mbe, do you mind just bringing up that slide, where it starts with empathy and, refining? Can you just bring up that slide again? Because I would really
Absolutely.
like us to, stress that although the example Mbe might have used is for an engagement we had with a major agricultural client, this is the framework that we use with smaller businesses. And this is one thing I want to leave businesses on the line with. I want to leave this thought with you. Any strategy tool or framework, including innovation tools, design thinking tools, can be used and applied in your thinking for your small business. You don't have to be a huge company turning over millions to use a strategy tool or a framework. See how it can apply to your business. And a lot of these times it feels like we're rushing and racing through content. But what we're trying to do as well is get businesses that are on the line, and those of you that are watching through our YouTube channel, to almost know what you don't know on a topic so that you can explore it further, do the research, ask certain questions, use the terms and terminologies that our expert facilitators are sharing. So, Mbe, do you just want to talk through this quickly with an example of a small or medium client that we've just used, maybe one of the technology businesses, the program we've just delivered on, without sharing the details of the business?
100%. So one of the SMEs we worked with, I'll pick the one, they do bespoke app development. And so they make apps. They've got a team of developers, and actually this is a great example. They've got a team of developers, which means they can build anything, and that means they end up building everything. And so when I spoke to the founders, I said, you know, the founder is a business guy and a dev, the two guys. So it's a great combination. Because they can build anything, they end up building everything. And I said, okay, if you had to build a unicorn, you know, one product that you're gonna really go full steam ahead into market with, you know, what does that look like? And then obviously they said, well, it depends. You know, we need to understand a problem. We need to understand the community. We need to understand the problem. We have the business development sales expertise, and the other co-founder is a super experienced dev. So the actual development expertise is there as well. Sales and dev are there. But what do we build? You know, what do we build? And this is where the empathy then becomes important, because we sat down and we said, okay, if we're going to do design thinking, let us first decide who we're building for. Again, market sensing. Are we developing something in financial services? They were very interested in financial services because they have the capability of building products in financial services, kind of payment wallets, that sort of thing. So they were kind of pushing towards that direction. I said, okay, fine. Let us look at different communities. There's a township community. Inside a township community, there are multiple communities. There are people that are traveling with taxis, traveling with buses, traveling with private cars. There are school kids that are in kumbis. These are different communities of people. There are pensioners, there are people who are unemployed, there are people who are studying, etc. If you had to first empathize, pick one of these communities, a student who goes to a university, etc., and understand the amount of transacting they do, and the fact that you'll find the average student that lives in a township but uses a taxi to get to school, but uses maybe BRT to come back home. This is a person who must use cash to get into the taxi, who must use their bank card to pay for things inside varsity, but must use their BRT card to come back home. You know, these are three different ways of transacting that this person uses. And it's so interesting how we interchange between these things every day. Also, this is a student who has a Capitec app, for instance, to buy airtime. So these are 4 different payment ways or methods that they use interchangeably every single day. So this is a very complex user who's using cash, card, bank card, and app every single day, 5 days to 6 days a week. So first of all, understand that. You know, what are the issues there? Do they need to move money from one bank card to the other? They forget to load their BRT card. The BRT system is offline. How does that affect their mobility? You know, et cetera, et cetera. You have to deepen your empathy and understanding of what this one student and the 4 payment solutions that they use every day and the challenges that may come from that. So anyway, we went through the process. We eventually kind of circled in on a problem that we noted. I have to just be careful because this is something they're looking at. We kind of found a problem that is worth, I think, digging deeper into. And before ideation, I challenged them. I said, go find 100 students that live in a township, use a taxi to get to school, swipe when they get to campus, use an app to buy airtime and data, and then use a BRT or whatever, or Gautrain to get back home. Actually find them and ask them, what are the kinds of problems you face? What happens when you run out of money? What happens if you don't have cash in the morning? Does that mean you're not going to get to school? What's going to happen? You know, and I really pushed them, and these These guys now have to go out there and find 100 students in townships. They have to get in the car. You have to get in the car and go there. If you're not willing to get in the car and go there, you're not going to start a solution and you're not going to get clients. It's just not going to happen. So that's just an idea of helping a startup that goes from zero to, okay, we've got a community, we understand their problem, and we understand their issues, we understand their life, we understand how they transact, the very dynamic transacting contact points that they have, and the complications of it all, particularly with things like load shedding. Power's down, it means they can't swipe, the machine's not working. BRT, the bus is offline. In the morning, they've got 200 rands, they don't have change. That affects whether they can get on a taxi or not. This is all so complex. And this is happening to hundreds of thousands of young people every day. There's a problem there and there's a solution there. So design thinking can help. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Mbe. I mean, that was a great example. And again, I know we use a technology example. So if you're in the service industry, I mean, I once did a design thinking intervention for a corporate client, and maybe Raksha again, it was a big client. But, we mapped out the entire home loan process with user observations and came up with a design thinking solution. And service industry type entrepreneurs have said to me, but how do I prototype if I'm doing financial services? I mean, what do I launch? And it could be as simple as changing a poster for your business, sending that out and testing whether people actually want to buy into this new service stream or product stream that you're launching. So it doesn't have to be as complicated as actually creating an app as a technology business. It could be putting something out there that illustrates the service that you want to actually embark on and see what buy-in you get for that particular product or service that you want to launch. Kavisha, I'd like you to look at Nirasha's question. We're going to get to that in a little bit, the last question with regards to the best platform to talk about design thinking. But Alice, if you want to unmute and ask your question, maybe one of us can also answer it. Alice's question is around creating business proposals using this. Alice, do you want to just explain your question to us?
Yes, thank you for the opportunity. I was listening to I'm sorry, I just don't remember the name. Our first presenter when she was when she was explaining about the innovation. And then when I put together her presentation and Mbe's presentation, in my mind, I was thinking of having a concept that I can use to infiltrate the corporate, like having a fresh, brand new idea that was never like a gap that I see that I can close as a business owner. So I just wanted to find out if this will help me put together something that I can present to the government or larger corporate that will assist me to grow in my business. I don't know if I make sense.
So maybe if I can go first, Jayshree.
Yes, please, Mbe.
Thanks for the question, Ma'am Alice. So the answer is 100% yes. Design thinking is, and at YIEDI we use it beyond just assisting organizations in understanding the problems of their users or understanding their users better. It becomes a great new venture creation tool, where and it's also a great market entry strategy, where a great example is this agriculture business that I was mentioning earlier. Large, nationwide, basically Southern African. These are the biggest grain guys in Southern Africa. So to get an organization that is pure agriculture, these guys, it's trucks, it's farms, it's grain, it's silos, that's it. They know their business. So to go in there and think you're going to tell them about farming or grain or climate or water or trucks, that's a mistake. But when we went in there, I went in and I said, you know what, let's do design thinking. And slowly through the week-long process, we started, like I said, we came up with 4 solutions, one of them being a composting management solution, a silo app, as well as a marketplace. Because ultimately, an existing large organization, this is a small team. You'll have listed businesses, big listed businesses, where the team you're speaking to is 15 people. And these are the 15 people that are responsible for that entire work stream for a national organization. It's not hundreds of people, it's these 15 people in the room. So these 15 people definitely won't know everything about the market. They won't know everything about users. So just you bringing up a new way to think about users, a new way to empathize, a new way to find problems that the users may be having, a new way to do market sensing. This is so valuable. And once you do that, there's definitely a problem that you're going to find. And the moment you find a problem, you've found a solution. Kavisha?
Thank you so much, Mbe. Raksha, I know you had your hand up earlier and then I saw it go down. So if you had another question, feel free to unmute. But for now, I'm going to ask Kavisha, do you want to respond to Nirasha's question in the chat? And if not, I can also give some input into
Okay. No, I can respond, but I just want to quickly say something to Alice. If she recalls the framework that I shared on my slides, sometimes you can use a problem statement to start design thinking. And I talk about problem statement a lot in my book because with sustainable development, you have to go out and search for problems to start with. And a basic way of looking at problem statement is to look at the desired state that you want to get to and look at the current state and try to identify the gap between those two. And you can then come up with a problem statement. So just trying to understand more about what a problem statement is and how to identify it. That's how you can identify the gaps in corporates and in governments. And that's actually the starting point for design thinking. And then you can identify who are the end users. And then you can go into empathizing, defining, and with the rest of the process. Then with Nirasha, the best platform to talk about a product or service that you want to design, again, is to identify who are the end users of this. And sometimes we need to also broaden our scope of end users because that would then open new markets for us. Because if I am, Jeshi had a session earlier on with over 50s. And the people that were there were mostly people who were much younger than that. And they found value in that. So they could be potential end users because it's about forward planning and planning for the future. So it's about identifying who the potential markets are and who are the end users in those markets. And that is the best place where you would start the research is where are the end users for this product or service, and then understanding them.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that, Kavisha. Nirasha, please unmute. I mean, I'd love to say hello, but I hope that adds value to your thinking as well. I mean, we've seen that market research can be conducted in the most interesting places, everything from community boards to boards in large shopping centers, to asking a question on LinkedIn sometimes, to just posting something on Instagram. So you can get, feedback on what is it you're thinking about from the most interesting places and spaces and channels. It's just about thinking about, as Kavisha said, your end user, and your end user is not always who you assume it to be. So that can also be a bit tricky, is, sometimes you've got to put something out there to see where it triggers interest, so you know where to ask the questions or bring people into these focus discussions or observation rooms that we used to use in large corporates. So Nirasha, please feel free to unmute. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, thank you guys. It's really interesting because as a small business, we don't really think about design thinking. You always assume it's corporate, but I love the tool that you shared, and I could already see my light bulb moments, seeing how I can actually use some of the products and answer some of those questions and go through the process. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Nirasha. Before you go, can you give us an idea how you think you'll be using it? Maybe it inspires someone else on the line to also do something similar.
Yeah, sure. You know what, Jayashree, I usually get my best ideas, and sometimes my daughter Sana tells me, "Mommy, you need to shelve some of your ideas. You think of a new one all the time, you know?" So I think sometimes I don't go through the process when I have an idea, and I put a thought out too quickly on my social media platforms without enough research and without enough build up towards it. And so when I launch it, I know the content and the information and the transformation that can take place. But I feel sometimes it's put out there too quickly, if that sounds familiar. And I think now I'm going to look at my new ideas and see how and is there a need for it. And I love that, looking at the end users and having a problem question. And yeah, that's quite interesting. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nirasha. Raksha, over to you. I see your hands up.
Thank you to all three of our design thinking experts in the room. When I hear you speaking, and just going right back to the question that I initiated that little conversation with them earlier on around who do we speak to, and this whole body of work around speak to 100 people, please explain to us the difference between design thinking and lean methodology. Because when I hear that, for me, I remember that being one of the first principles around lean startup methodology. Go speak to 100 people and validate the need for your product or service. Thank you.
So I'm going to give that a shot, and I'd love for Kavisha to come in because I think she's just a lot smarter than I am, and so is Mbe. But I'm going to give that a shot, Raksha. So one of the things that's quite interesting, I had a conversation last week, and someone said to me, "Oh, when did you move out of innovation and into entrepreneurship?" And I just had to giggle because innovation and entrepreneurship are two sides of the same coin. In the same way that design thinking as a methodology is part of, and if used by startups, is part of the lean startup methodology, because you'll see pieces of design thinking. So lean startup says launch, test, do your MVP, get the feedback, and then make changes to your product and then launch again. And the whole part around getting feedback, getting users to use your products, taking their feedback, and then coming up with a new version of your product is the lean startup methodology. So they are intertwined. So it's not one and the other. It's part of a body of knowledge around the concept of coming up with new products, new innovations, using the concept of design thinking. When it is used within startups as well, it becomes part of the lean startup methodology. I hope that answers your question. I hope I completely haven't gotten it wrong, but I'd love to hear from Kavisha or Mbe on that as well.
Okay, looking at design thinking and lean startup, if you recall, I had a slide on the innovation journey. And I had the first one was a concept, the second one was development, and the third one was implementation. So design thinking contributes to the first one, which is developing a concept, which is understanding end user needs, identifying gaps, and then developing a concept of, even when you develop a prototype in design thinking, it's about what could this innovation meet. So it's a concept. And then when you move into the next phase of developing this concept, that is when you use lean startup. because lean startup is then about you have your product and it's just this rapid cyclic way of going back and forth of then taking that prototype that you have and trying to get feedback from the customer or the end user, and then go back and improve. So it's a method for continuous improvement. And this method of lean startup and continuous improvement can be used basically for anything, even if you use it in an organization. So the difference between design thinking and lean startup is that design thinking would understand customer needs, and lean startup is more of a continuous improvement methodology.
Thank you so much for that, Kavisha. Mbe, are there any comments that you'd like to make on that before we close up today's session?
I think you've both definitely covered it, history. Thanks, Kavisha.
Okay, I see this. Thank you so much, Mbe. A man of very few words always, but just so much knowledge behind those few words. So Rashmi says, such lovely content, not a design thinking question. I would love to connect with, okay, okay. We'll take this conversation offline, Rashmi. Thank you so much for that comment. We're always here to try and create access to market opportunities when permission is given to us by our clients to do so. So thank you so much, Mbe and Kavisha. Let me just switch my video back on so I can say a proper goodbye to everyone. I just want to stop the share. For some reason, that won't happen. Okay, thank you, everyone. Everyone that's joined us for this Mentorship Monday on YouTube or on this live session, thank you so much for your contribution, your questions, the engagement that we've had. I hope that between Mbe, Kavisha, myself, and some of the technical experts on the line, we didn't confuse you too much. Just remember, these sessions are about also getting you to understand certain concepts that you can use to apply to either your small business or if you're in a corporate role. There's nothing wrong with researching some of these tools and techniques so that you can do your job better and see how it can actually apply to your business. They say the best way to start something is just start. But using some of these tools and using some of the experience from technical experts that we bring onto these Mentorship Mondays, hopefully will help you to take your product to the next level and not increase the failure rate that we see so many small businesses go through. With that, I'm just going to check very quickly. There are no other questions, no other hands up. And Raksha, you'll be pleased to know we are ending on time at 5 o'clock today. So thank you everyone for a wonderful Mentorship Monday. Thanks again, Mbe and Kavisha, for your time. Remember, if you are interested in Kavisha's book, it is Initiate Design Thinking. I do not get any profit share from the sales, but I do think it's a good read to demystify what is design thinking and look at some practical case studies as well. Thank you, everyone, and have a lovely, lovely afternoon further.